Welcome to
Spread the Word!
Cheers.
Clink, clink.
Chin, chin. Yay. I'll kick us off because I have many thoughts about this book. I read Blood Debts by Terry J. Benton Walker. It is a debut fantasy, young adult fantasy by a man. And I don't remember the last book I read by a man.
I was actually thinking that. I don't know.
When I realized he was a man, I was like, look at me! Diversifying my bookshelf. So this book, Blood Debts, is set in New Orleans, and it focuses mainly on one family. And in this world, magic is real, and there's active legislation on the books or on the docket to legislate magic. Like, you can't trust magicians, you can't trust witches. This needs to be controlled. So that's like the political backdrop of this book. When the book opens, we're following two twins, Christina and Clem. Their sect of magic is Gen magic, and that's traditionally like generational magic is what it's short for. And they are mostly black folks. It's passed down through enslaved people. And they talk about this throughout the book, how like their ancestors developed this magic and passed down this magic, and some of them became gods, literal gods, so that they could protect people, they could save people. We're in this novel, or in this family, and their mother is dying. A doctor comes and he's like, yeah, your mom's just gonna die. She's just gonna die. All of her organs are failing. We don't know why. And then they find a hex doll in their mom's bedroom. And they're like, okay, like, alarm, bring everyone home. Somebody's trying to kill us. And then that's when the novel like really gets going. And then you're going on a hunt to find who's trying to kill the family, who's trying to curse them, who wants their power, because they're like the heir apparent to this whole magical system. But they aren't actually in power anymore. There's a lot of political drama. There's also some necromancy involved that involves a lot of like really sad, heartbreaking things. Because of course, like, who gets involved in necromancy? People who just like decide they want to bring random people back to the dead? No. Like, yeah. Because you are very sad.
Yeah.
And somebody you loved.
All right. I mostly started reading Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. It's actually not coming out till July, but I think people are going to like it. It's a really short little read. It is a translation from Japanese, and it's also a male author. And not
Look at us.
Satoshi Yagasawa. I needed something that was endearing and sweet and like just not complicated, I guess. Right. It starts Takako, in the main character. She has been dating this guy for like a year or so, and he takes her out to dinner and to say that he's getting married to his other girlfriend. And she was unaware that he had another girlfriend, but he is unfazed by this. He's like, you can still, we can still do stuff after I'm married. And she was like, what? Yeah. And they worked together. So she ended up like resigning from her job because it was too much to be around him all the time. And she didn't really know what she was going to do, but her uncle calls her, she's not super close to him, and says, if you want, you can come stay at the bookshop that I own. There's a room above the bookshop, and for room and board, you can just help me run it some. And so she's like, well, I can't keep affording the rent here, and I want to stay in Tokyo rather than going back home. So she goes to do that. The bookshop is in this neighborhood of Tokyo that I can't remember the name of right now, that's just all secondhand bookshops, and they all have like different specialties, but it's the most concentrated area of bookshops in the world. Of course, she is not actually a reader when she starts working there, but because she's sitting, I'm like also kind of listening to her being like, then I sat at the bookstore for 8 hours, and then I just went back and went to sleep. She's depressed, so she's sleeping a lot. But she also is like, her uncle really doesn't tell her what to do at the bookstore. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, what a life. You're just She's nothing to do.
Snoozing
Just
and
Languishing
snoozing.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She eventually picks up a book and reads it, and it very much captures her. And she's like, "Uncle, I love this book." And he gets very excited because like he doesn't pressure her into reading, but like he's very happy that she finds it. And then yeah, it's like just about the different regular customers that are coming in. She meets a young editor from a publishing house that comes in. The ex-boyfriend eventually comes back in and tosses things up for a bit. And there's a really sweet scene that made me very emotional between her and her uncle. They're talking one night, and she was like, I think she's asked him essentially like, you know, like why did you reach out to me? I don't understand why you'd like give me this opportunity to be here besides just being family. We're not like close. And he said, you saved my life. And she was, I'm getting emotional. It's cute. And she's like, what do you mean? And he was like, and when I was in my 20s, I was really like having a hard time. I was depressed. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I thought like everything was hopeless. And then your mom brought you home to introduce you to our father, and I met you, and I suddenly felt like the world like was open. It was so cute. It was so sweet coming from like an uncle, because it wasn't like he doesn't have his own kids and he doesn't want them, but I really like identified with that of like, oh, it's such a nice connection. It's very Japanese, so kind of like very straightforward. There's not a lot of emotion sounding like you would get maybe in English written book, so it's all sort of about like the subtext kind of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched a lot of anime or Japanese television by any means. My only probably background for this is Sailor Moon,
Which is excellent.
but I feel like it's maybe more along those lines.
Oh,
Not like
that's fun.
in terms of like not like magic or anything, but sort of in like kind of the goofiness.
Yeah, the exaggeration.
Yes,
Yeah.
because like a lot of the like scenes, I imagine her uncle kind of bumbling in and like sort of being like that kind of. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
some like anime characters crashing into a door and be like, oh.
Yeah. And then the big like teardrop when something's like.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys are all feeling very up right now.
I know, right?
I'm about to bring you crashing down.
Oh my god.
I read Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. I was quite taken by the cover.
Clearly.
It's beautiful.
It's gorge.
Our protagonist, Cassie, you open with her in the subway. She lives in Silicon Valley. She's sitting in the subway that she has a black hole that has followed her since childhood. And it's like hovering above her. Depending on how upset she is, it's bigger. If she's in a happy place, you know, it gets smaller to like a little pinprick. It's real enough that she can smell it. She's done a lot of research. Yeah, she's done a lot of research on black holes, so it has this like metallic-y smell. The author is clearly telling you that this is real to her on a very intense level. You are introduced to her life. She works at a tech startup, and it's so like the production level that is expected of the people that work there is so intense that she microdoses cocaine every morning.
Having worked at a startup, I
Yep.
understand the why somebody would feel the need to do that.
She's amazing at her job. It seems like she's very knowledgeable, but it doesn't matter what she does. Her boss is always like, Cassie, you did this presentation, it sucked, do it better. Apparently there is a rival tech startup that is trying to do the same thing that they're doing. So the CEO gathers a group of people, like I think 4 people. She's one of them, and says, we need to take them down. Cassie has this moment where she's like, okay, so how far am I willing to go for this? And she's like, okay, this is what we should do. We should do this, this, and this, and this. And he's like, that's great. That's a great start. Now think about some illegal things that we can do. And she has to like sit back, turn that like, you know, just basically her conscience off and be like, this is what we should do. And so this is what's happening at work. Meanwhile, you're flashing back to her childhood. Her mother was terrible. She compares her to a wasp that was just like always stinging her. And you also find out that she's dating this man who she calls the chef. You never find out what his name is. And you find out that she seems to love him, but he's in an open relationship with his girlfriend. And of course tells her that after she's gotten
emotionally involved.
Involved.
Shitty.
Yeah.
So shitty.
Yeah.
Not acceptable.
You realize that her friendships, like, they're not super strong, and they're not super authentic, and her relationships at work aren't, and obviously her relationship with her boyfriend, the chef, isn't, and her parents. And you're just like, the whole time you're reading this, you're just like, I just want to be your friend and help, like,
oh my God.
help you. Yeah,
Yeah.
because she's not a bad person. A lot of things that she said I really like related to. As you're reading it, you're just kind of like, you have to take deep breaths, because she is just in such a state of emotional turmoil and mental turmoil. The black hole is getting bigger and bigger as the book goes on, and she keeps talking about stepping into it. So very much like Mrs. March, but the difference is, I mean, I empathized with Mrs. March, but there were still things about her that I didn't like. This I really sincerely liked her, and I understood.
She's just having to do bad things.
Yeah, for her own survival, because her dad was like, you can't come back here. You're not allowed to move back into the house. Once you leave, you're out.
God.
So she has nowhere to go. She has no authentic, genuine relationships, and it's just so terrible. But it's a really good book. I really loved it.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So if you have the emotional fortitude, please read this book.
Yeah.
I'm not into that. That's not my
I'm
thing.
not into that. There it is. Yep. Light, winning love by daylight, never running from a real fight. She is the one named Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon. She is the one, Sailor Moon. We're ridiculous.
Olivia's like, I am hungry.
Good night. Good night and good luck.